Hello, everybody. All right, so we're back. We're talking about Bruce Lee again. We're talking about Neon Flux Productions' Game of Death. So today's been quite a big day. We've had quite a few posts from Neon Flux. Of course, they've made a video public for general viewing. Another one of those progress cut concept trailers. We've also had some members only stuff dropping today. Chief among them, this nigh on 15-minute progress cut. And let me tell you, it breezes by in no time at all. Because I watched it first thing this morning, and I've just gone back and watched it again just in preparation for doing this video. And my word, it breezes along. Like, you have a hard time believing this is nearly 15 minutes. It just coasts along. It's very, very well done. The narration in it's brilliant. Obviously, it's fascinating to see how much it's developed, since the early videos. Because, again, it's all constructive criticism, but even they'd be the first to admit, in the early videos, the voice work, like the narration, and of course the initial voice they had for Bruce Lee, it wasn't it, and it was never intended to be. But what they've got now is really, honestly, improvement is staggering. They've come on leaps and bounds. But the narration's good. We have an initial narration, kind of speaking on behalf of Neon Flux themselves, which was great. But then we get into the actual trailer, and we get basically this very 1970s style narration, and it works absolutely brilliantly. It's very, very effective. It really it's in keeping with the spirit of the whole thing. It's and it also, just in terms of what you've got to appreciate is, these guys have took the time to actually come up with the script. The dialogue is for the narrations very well done. So again, that's an achievement in itself, because it's not just using the AI to create like realistic sequences, but the fact that they've really put the thought into what the dialogue, I mean, albeit for trailer narration here, but they've done a really good job in that respect. So that deserves some recognition right off the bat. So, obviously, we get quite a lot in this trailer. Well, you'd hope so, with it being nearly 15 minutes long. We're treated to this wonderful, wonderful establishing shot of Hong Kong and the Hong Kong Bay Harbour. And then, of course, we get shots of Hai Tien at home in his apartment, having breakfast with his brother and sister. Again, I just want to take some time to talk about, just the detail and what they've been able to achieve so far. Their render, again, I say render, model, whatever you want to call it. What they've been able to do for Nora Meow, she looks fantastic. Obviously, very much modelled closely off what she looks like in The Way of the Dragon. I mean, obviously that makes sense, because The Way of the Dragon was 72, and then obviously, Bruce Lee essentially went direct from The Way of the Dragon straight onto the Game of Death. So yeah, basically, she would have had been sporting the same look. Basically, she would have looked pretty much the same. But when you see like certain women or ladies, and you think, just they really just capture, and you think, what an absolutely beautiful, beautiful lady, beautiful woman. I was struck very much by Nora Meow in The Way of the Dragon. The way she looks in that film, she is stunningly beautiful. But she, I mean, not just in that, like, obviously the way she looks in The Big Boss. And then, of course, later on, when she was in Snake and Crane Arts of Shaolin with Jackie Chan, she's, she absolutely beautiful. But there's just something about the way she looks in The Way of the Dragon. Stunningly beautiful. So I'm really, really happy that that's kind of being used as the basis for her model in this. And then, of course, we get shots of them at the airport. And I commented on their video today and said as much, but I love what they've gone for Bruce's look in this. He's in the grey three-piece suit. We'll call it essentially. It is essentially the Goldfinger suit that Sean Connery wears, the grey three-piece, and obviously, I mean, I know obviously Bruce Lee essentially sports that suit in Enter the Dragon. Of course, when he visits the grave of the grave of his sister. And obviously that's the inspiration for it. And I think it was one of Bruce Lee's. Or Bruce Lee probably did the Roger Moore things like, "Can I keep the wardrobe?" Because I'm sure he wore that suit at some premiere or press event. There's pictures of him with Raymond Chow, and he's wearing that suit. And it's great. It's great. I mean, it's one of those timeless suits. I mean, if you're gonna pick a suit, looking like Sean Connery and Goldfinger, that's not a bad thing. And there's always, obviously, that was the thing in Enter the Dragon. There was a heavy Bond influence, but there's always been like an association of Bruce Lee with Bond, because obviously you rewind back to that test, the screen test he did for Charlie Chan Number One Son. Obviously, the pitch for that was he was essentially going to be a Chinese James Bond. So again, putting Bruce in a Goldfinger suit, that grey three-piece, absolutely. Um, Obviously, that's one thing they did. Neon Flux have acknowledged this anyway. That there's going to be inconsistencies in this progress cut. That like one of the things they highlighted was the injuries on the guys. Like for example, the injuries on Che Yuan throughout. It's like in the earlier stages he might have blood on him, and then in the later stages he might be fine. But obviously that's all going to be rectified by the time the finished cut comes around. But there was a little bit you notice in regards to Bruce Lee's three-piece suit. Like in the airport, it looks one way. It looks great. And then when there's a little bit as he's arriving at the mob boss's residence, where just the little details of it change slightly. Like for example, the shirt changes from a white shirt to a striped shirt. But again, all of this will be rectified, of course. They already know. They don't need me to tell them. But yeah, just going for that initial look in the airport, and then it reverts to it later on in a shot when he comes face to face with a mob boss. That great three-piece, the white. Can I just make a little request? It's my personal bias coming through, because I know in some shots it's got the straight legs on the trousers. Please, can you go with the bell bottoms, the flares? Because I know you've done the bell bottoms for James Chen's character, which is consistent with what he has in the 72 footage, which is great. Please, can you give Bruce the bell bottoms? Because I'm a major Roger Moore fan. I'm a very devout bell bottom fan. I've took the time to have trousers custom made so that I could have some bell bottoms. It's the whole thing. It's gone on for like 20 years, more than my fascination with bell bottoms. Also, can I ask another again? Who am I? But we're playing with house money. Again, they'll either acknowledge it or they won't, but this gets onto a point I want to address later on. But obviously, there's in terms of inconsistencies which are going to be addressed later on. There's times where Bruce's hair length changes, like sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's a bit shorter, kind of not unlike what he has in The Way of the Dragon. again, just a suggestion. Um, when you're deciding on what the final consistent look's going to be like, I mean, I'm you might be able to tell I'm a bit biased towards like the longer hair, but guys, if you've got to choose, just go long all the way, please. Genuinely, I think Bruce looked better with the long hair. I mean, like we've seen when he was Kato, and we've seen obviously that was one of the great things. There's so many wonderful pictures of Bruce, that have been taken over the years. Now, obviously, you saw in the 60s, he was very much that clean cut, well, for a portion of the 60s, around the Green Hornet time. Um, but then obviously, we saw like obviously as the 70s came around and he was doing Big Boss and Longstreet, the hair started getting longer. And again, basically in Fist of Fury, essentially the same thing. But then obviously Shorten did a bit for The Way of the Dragon. Uh, Kind of took a page out of Betty Ting Pei's book, but we won't go too much into that. They had the same hairstylist. Um, but Bruce, I just thought Bruce looked better with the longer hair. Like you look at obviously the 72 footage where it's getting longer, and then Enter the Dragon. There's some shots you'll notice where it's really long. Like for example, there's shots in the underground cavern, and then there's I think a couple of shots in the Bob Wall fight because his hair fluctuates for lack of a better term in the Enter the Dragon. But honestly, it gets like to the longest he's ever had it, that we've seen in a film. And honestly, it's great. But also one of the great things is, and this is one of the things I've talked about before that Jackie Chan utilised, in his earlier films. Um, the longer hair in the fight sequences, it can, for lack of a better term, it can add dramatic effect. Like, for example, when you get rocked by a punch and you sell it, the hair flies and it adds a much more, like, it adds to the impact of it. I mean, incidentally, I still to this day, Jackie Chan's hair in The Young Master, I think may be the greatest hair ever in cinematic history. I mean, Robin Shu's hair in the 95 Mortal Kombat comes close, but they're essentially they're kind of related. They're both going for the same thing. But honestly, go long, just please go as long as possible with Bruce's hair in this. But again, that's just, I want some representation. I mean, you'd think I'd be fine because we're getting He-Man and the Masters of the Universe this year. You'd think that's all the representation I'd need, but no, it's not enough. But yeah, that's so obviously these consistencies they know they've held their hands up to it, and they always say this is it's a progress cut. Um, all of this will be ironed out in the final edit, but it's just great to see the progression. They're doing fantastic. And then just in terms of like obviously when we get to we embark on our quest, we see some glimpses of the fight in the courtyard again. We do see a little bit of James Chen and Che Yuan fighting together against the guards. What I will say is what they've shown here of them, just to Neon Flux, the previous public trailer that I talked about in my previous video, where we have that wonderful shot of James Chen and Che Yuan battling against the guards in that wonderful wide shot that I spotlighted in my previous video. Please make sure that you keep that for the final edit of the film, because honestly, I said it before in my previous video, but I'll say it again. It's one of the greatest things I've ever seen. It's fantastic. Just like all of the action that's going on in this film, and just the way the way it's weird to say about the AI, but the way the camera's moving with it's brilliant. So please make sure you keep that, because it's such a fantastic shot. and just going on, just in the way it syncs up with the music as well, because I know you did the Hall of the Unknown track from Bruce Lee and God in the previous video, and that was great. But yeah, we get to see some great stuff in here. We get shots of, obviously, concept shots for what the courtyard fight's going to look like, and then we get into the pagoda. There was some lovely establishing shots, by the way. Of, the various like statues as we go through the entrance to the pagoda, and then of course we get to our first opponent, the first guardian, Huang In Shik. And of course we address that this is where we're going to lose Bob Wall. Bob, I wish I could say it's sad to see you go, but it really isn't. I mean, I'll tell you straight. When Neon Flux did the poll, who do you want to be the final member of the team? Do you want it to be Bob Wall or do you want it to be Tony Lau? I really like Tony Lau, I really do. But obviously, I was trying to keep in mind what was in the James Flower Final Game of Death documentary. Initially James Flower told us that Tony Lau was one of the names written down by Bruce, but ultimately his name was crossed out altogether and he was going to be replaced by a white American, and the odds are it was going to be Bob Wall. So in terms of trying to be as faithful to Bruce's vision as possible, that was one aspect of it why I voted for Bob Wall. But the other thing was, we just need some cannon fodder. And to be honest, I mean, we get to see some of what Bob Wall's fight against Huang In Shik's gonna look like, but there was part of me that was hoping that Bob Wall's exit, for lack of a better term, might have been played for laughs in some way. Like, I had visions, like what I would have loved, and again, who am I to say? But I just had visions of them all going through the door, and they get into the pagoda and they're just taking it all in. And then just all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Huang In Shik just comes flying in, and he just eviscerates Bob Wall. Like kind of like in Dragons Forever, how Benny Urquidez just one-shots Yun Biao. Not unlike that. But again, it's me. It's just a weird hang-up that I have, but it's fine. But either way, I'm still glad that Bob Wall gets taken out first. Poor Carter Wong. Right, Carter Wong, because he, obviously what we see of him in this, obviously he engages with Huang In Shik, but he gets the wind knocked out of him. Now this guy, I feel tremendous sympathy for this character, because next to Bruce, he's the only redeemable character in the bunch. Because obviously we know James Chen and Che Yuan are in cahoots with the mob boss, of course. And, Bob Wall, just no. But yeah, Carter Wong's just there to try and save his mum. I'm sorry. It's a bit of dark humour. But it's funny. I love that they put in this. There's a moment, obviously, where, James Chen and Che Yuan just leave Bruce to it, and they proceed on to the next floor. And then, obviously, Bruce is just left to finish Huang In Shik. But I love that the guys at Neon Flux took the time to put a moment in there where Bruce goes over to check on Carter Wong, make sure he's still okay. So I did appreciate that. And then of course we get on the second floor where we meet up with Taki Kimura. And I just want to again applaud the guys at Neon Flux for just the detail that they've put into the Taki Kimura fighting style. Like, it has some close-ups on the hand movement. It's brilliant. The attention to detail that they've put, it's fantastic. So just a real want to applaud them for that. And then obviously we just see, the various, each of them have a go. And then obviously we see a Carter Wong eventually get up. He's still down on the first floor, but he gets up and he makes his way up. And obviously we know we're going to have to say bye to Carter Wong on the second floor. Oh, honestly, because I love Big Trouble in Little China, so I have that connection, attachment to Carter Wong. That's still one of the greatest lines in that movie. Play your cards right. You live to talk about it. It's gonna be sad when Carter Wong gets killed by Taki Kimura, but it's a necessary evil. It's all right. I thought that was a nice little attention to detail as well. We get to see the part where, again, James Chen and Che Yuan, they leave early. They're going to progress on to the third floor. But I thought that was a nice little attention to detail where we see him stop and pick up their, obviously, Che Yuan picks up the log. And obviously James Chen has his... I don't know. It's not a Carly stick, is it? It's just a stick. Shadversity there to prove it's fine. It's still valid. It's alright. And then they're on their merry way. But then obviously that's kind of where this wraps up, because we're essentially we're all caught up after that, because we're on the third floor. And obviously that we know what happens from there on in for the most part till we get to killing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Again, I don't... Obviously, it's entirely up to Neon Flux. They've got their own vision in mind of how they want to do this. I still hope that they'll utilise Bruce's 72 footage, because I really do believe... there's no reason why you couldn't use that. Let's do a hybrid project. It doesn't all have to be AI generated. We've been given this wonderful gift of 40 minutes of footage that Bruce shot in 72. And obviously it's been wonderfully restored by the guys at Arrow Video. It's there. So I don't see what the benefit would be of disregarding that in favour of generating AI stuff. Now, obviously, you'd still have to dub your own voices in, AI voices and sound effects and things. That's fine. And obviously your own music score. That's fine. But the footage is there. And obviously, this is direct from the master. This is all Bruce's footage that he, obviously he was at the helm of this whole thing, so this comes directly from Bruce. So let's not leave it laying on the cutting room floor. Let's use it. And obviously it takes a tremendous amount of work. A tremendous amount of work. It lightens the workload basically. There's a couple of adjustments I would make within the footage, because you look at Arrow's assembly of it, and it's brilliant. It is. But there's one little thing that's always bothered me, and other people have probably picked up on this, and I know in other assemblies of it, it's been edited out. So this would be one little note. In the Dan Inosanto fight, when they're both squaring off with the nunchucks, there's a little bit in the wide shot where Bruce, he has this flourish with the nunchucks where he twirls them around like that, and then he flips them round. So he starts off with them twirling it like that. It's like as they're starting to circle each other. He flips it round, and then and then obviously he follows through with a different motion, and he swings it around the head. Now, if you notice, the nunchaku catches him on the head. So I've always believed that shot where it catches him wasn't intended for the final cut. I.e., it was going to cut before that shot. Now, this is the thing now. Stripey Rambles has addressed this. Now, I adore the 72 Game of Death footage. I really do. And if I was to play with house money and I could pick anything, my favourite Bruce Lee thing is the 72 footage of Game of Death. Honestly, I adore it. I'm absolutely fascinated by it. But Stripey Rambles makes a valid point that the nunchaku work in the battle with Danny Nasanto, it is a bit on the sloppy side. You know, when you compare to what he was doing in Fist of Fury, the Way of the Dragon, and then in Enter the Dragon, it's a bit sloppy. And there's a valid reason for it. There's a really good reason for it that Stripey Rambles has pointed out. When you look at the footage, it's clear that they're using foam nunchucks. And that was addressed. It was confirmed as much by James Flower in the documentary. Now the problem with that, as Stripey Rambles points out, when you're using foam nunchaku, they're very light. You don't have any weight in them. Whereas obviously when you contrast that with the nunchaku we used in Fist of Fury, the two he used in The Way of the Dragon, and then of course what he used in The Way of the Dragon, they had weight to them, so it helps towards more fluid movements. Whereas these foam ones, I mean, granted, you know, obviously it facilitates safety, of course. It's all in the interest of keeping the guys safe, because you don't want to be caught with a full-on wooden one. But these foam ones, there's no weight to them. So basically they're going to swing wildly, for lack of it. So basically, that's one little note. I would hope that you'd use the 72 footage, but if you go through it and you look through it, just that's one little moment that I don't think was ever intended to be in the final product. That is because you can see that Bruce, as he swings it over the head, it catches him. But so if you cut it before that, it'll save us all a lot of... and there are assemblies of it where they have gone along much the same lines and they've cut it. But yeah, that pretty much brings us all up to speed. And they've, again, another members only post that they've released today. They've posted essentially like a roadmap, you know, where they are at the minute, and also where, you know, like the next steps. But they also they took the time to just basically, you know, put on, you know, this project. It's coming from a great place of love, appreciation, respect, admiration, and just one of the great things that Neon Flux has maintained from the very beginning, that they want it to be a collaborative process. They've been very, very good at basically the way they've invited the members to make suggestions, and they've welcomed feedback, positive and negative. The way that they've conducted themselves and that they've interacted with the fans, they've been absolutely brilliant. They've been honestly, I'd just like to say to Neon Flux, genuinely thank you. You've been absolutely first class. You obviously, Neon Flux, they're a small independent studio, but the way that they've conducted themselves, when you contrast that with some of the major big studios, Neon Flux, some of the big Hollywood studios, you put them to shame. You really, really do. You know, that you've treated everybody with respect. You've took the time to read the comments and listen to them and take on board. And even, you know, there's been people who've been negative. Well, it's the internet, isn't it? But you've maintained such professionalism. Honestly, just tremendous. I can't compliment you enough. You guys are absolutely brilliant. The work that you've done so far, the passion that you've showcased, you guys are absolutely first class. So I'd just like to say thank you so much for all of the hard work that you've done. I'd like to congratulate you on the on just how far you've come. And we're just so excited to see the finished product. You guys deserve to win. You deserve a huge win. Because let me tell you something. You've done more to honour Bruce than those guys did back in 78. You know, people who actually knew Bruce and were involved with what was released in 78, that was just a travesty. They should hang their heads in shame. Whereas what you guys have come along and done off your own backs independently, you're absolutely brilliant. And when the time comes, I really hope that Shannon Lee and all of those at Bruce Lee Enterprises, I hope they see this for what it is, and they can appreciate the passion and the love that's been put into this. I really hope that you get the opportunity to enter into some official collaboration partnership, and I hope that the final product can get some kind of official release, whether it's, you know, theatrical release, digital release. If it gets a physical release on Blu-ray, I'll be there with bells on to buy it. And again, what a class act these guys are. The fact that they've said they want proceeds to go to benefit, you know, the estates, the families of those who were involved back in 72. I think, of course, a case could be made that there's certain proceeds that could go to benefit the Bruce Lee Foundation. Honestly, just these guys are brilliant. And just what they've been able to achieve, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And just, I think they're going to make Bruce proud. They're going to make the Bruce Lee fans proud. And it's just nice to see that this project's being held by people who really care. It's beautiful what they've been able to create, the sequences they've been able to put together, and even like the detail that they've put into like the opening titles. You know, it's very in keeping with the spirit of the Way of the Dragon titles. You know, obviously we had. Yeah, well, that was that's the translation of the Chinese title for the Way of the Dragon, isn't it? The fierce dragon crosses the sea, and obviously we see the animatic in that of the boat going across the sea. Well, they've done a similar thing here. You know, like a group of 5 individuals on an ascent up a mountain, in keeping with an ascent up the pagoda. It's very in keeping with the spirit. And then, of course, the design on the beautiful dragon design is lovely. And then, of course, at the end of the sequence, you know, and obviously we see the 2 trees, the strong oak tree that breaks under the pressure of the snow, and then the willow tree that bends in the wind and flows with the snow. Brilliant. And then, of course, that beautiful thing at the end where the dragon's mouth opens up and we go. It's brilliant stuff. So that wraps this up. Thank you for listening to this. And again, consider becoming a member of our channel and supporting the project, because it's really, really worth it. And again, I'm so proud to be involved in some minuscule way. And they've been very, very gracious. You know, they've took the time to watch my videos, which I really appreciate. And they've always just been very appreciative of any comments. Just thank you so much. There's so much to be excited about. Get involved with this. It's really, really worth it. It has so much merit to it. Let's try and keep the legacy of Bruce alive, do it justice, and let's get this thing over the finish line. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.